People noticed when I left, they noticed when I stayed away, and they noticed when I finally came back. But no one asked the right question. They asked, where did you go? They should have asked, why couldn't you stay? Today, I'm going to answer that question, not with the official version, with the truth. The real reason I disappeared from Dubai for months. But to understand the answer, you have to understand there are layers to it. And each layer reveals something I wasn't ready to admit until now. The surface answer is simple. I left because I needed space. That's what I told myself. That's what I told the few people who asked. I need time away to think, to breathe, to exist without constant observation. That wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. I did need space. Dubai had become suffocating. Every move watched, every decision analyzed, every moment scheduled. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't feel freely, couldn't exist without performance. So I left to places where my name carried less weight, where I could move without security details, where I could sit in a cafe without being recognized. That freedom, temporary, fragile freedom, felt necessary, like air after drowning. But needing space doesn't explain why I stayed away so long. Weeks turned into months, and people started asking questions. When is he coming back? Is something wrong? Is he avoiding something? The answer to that last question is yes. But what was I avoiding? That's where the surface answer falls apart. Because I wasn't just avoiding observation. I was avoiding something deeper, something I couldn't name yet. The second answer is harder to admit. I left because I was running, not physically, emotionally. I was running from the reality of my life, from the marriage that functions but doesn't fulfill, from the role that demands but doesn't reward, from the future that's already written, from the weight of knowing that nothing will ever change, that this is it, this marriage, this distance, this performance, forever. That reality, that permanent, unchangeable reality became unbearable, not dramatically, quietly, like pressure building until you can't breathe. So I ran. I convinced myself that distance would help, that being away from Dubai would give me perspective. That time would make acceptance easier. It didn't, because you can't run from your own life. You can only delay facing it. And that's what I was doing. Delaying, postponing the moment when I had to return to the marriage, to the role, to the reality I can't change. But this answer still doesn't explain everything, because running implies you think escape is possible. And I knew it wasn't. I knew I'd have to come back. I knew nothing would change. So why stay away so long if I knew escape was impossible? That's where the third answer begins. The third answer is the one I didn't want to admit, even to myself. I stayed away because I was grieving, not someone who died, but someone who disappeared. Her, the woman I loved before duty one, the one I let go, the one I thought I had processed, I hadn't. Grief doesn't follow schedules. It doesn't respect timelines. It surfaces when it wants, and it surfaced hard right before I left. I saw someone who reminded me of her. Not physically, but in the way she moved, the way she existed without trying, the way she was just present. And in that moment, everything I had buried came back. The loss, the regret, the memory of what love felt like when it was chosen, not arranged. I couldn't breathe, not metaphorically, actually couldn't breathe, so I left, not to run, but to grieve. Away from eyes that would misunderstand, away from a system that doesn't allow grief for things you shouldn't miss. I stayed away for months because grief takes time, and I hadn't given it any. I had moved on too quickly, married too soon, performed normalcy before I was ready. So grief waited, and when it finally came, it came with force, and I needed space to survive it. But even this answer isn't complete, because grief explains why I left. It doesn't explain why coming back felt impossible. The fourth answer is about fear. I didn't want to come back because I was afraid, not of judgment, not of consequences, but of something worse. I was afraid that nothing had changed, that I would return to the same empty marriage, the same distant relationship, the same performance, the same life I couldn't escape. I was afraid that the break, the months away, had changed me, but not my circumstances, that I would feel different, but live the same. And that gap between who I had become and what I had to return to, that gap terrified me, because it meant I would have to choose again between honesty and survival, between expressing what I felt and maintaining stability, between being real and being functional. And I already knew what I would choose: function. Because function is what's required, but choosing function again after months of freedom, that felt unbearable, so I delayed. I stayed away longer than necessary, not because I was running anymore, but because I was preparing to return to a life that no longer fit, to perform normalcy when nothing felt normal, to pretend I was fine when I wasn't. That preparation took time, more time than I expected, but even this answer, honest as it is, isn't the deepest one. There's one more layer, the one I didn't want to face. The real reason I disappeared for months, I was testing something. I was testing whether anyone would actually miss me, not the crown prince, me. I wanted to know if my absence would create a gap, if people would reach out, not officially, but personally. If anyone would ask if I was okay and mean it. I wanted to know if I mattered as a person, not as a position. And the answer destroyed me, because most people didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't care enough to ask. They assumed I was fine, assumed I was busy, assumed I would return when ready. No one panicked, no one worried, no one reached out in a way that made me feel seen. My wife didn't call asking when I'd return. She just waited, politely, distantly. The way you wait for someone you respect, but don't need emotionally. My family sent logistical messages. When are you coming back? There are events requiring your presence, not "are you okay?" Not "we miss you," just schedules, obligations, reminders that I'm needed functionally, but not personally. And that realization that my absence didn't create emotional urgency, that broke something in me, because it confirmed what I already feared, that I'm valued for what I do, not who I am, that people need the crown prince, but no one needs me. And living with that knowledge, returning to a life where you're functionally necessary, but emotionally invisible, that's why I stayed away so long, not because I wanted to, but because coming back meant accepting that truth permanently. So why did I finally come back? Not because I was ready, not because grief had ended, not because I had accepted my life. I came back because duty stopped waiting, the pressure mounted. Not emotional pressure, structural pressure. Events needed me. Decisions required my presence. The family made it clear, politely but firmly, that my absence had lasted long enough, so I returned, not because I wanted to, but because refusing would have created consequences I wasn't willing to face. I came back, and I performed normalcy. I smiled for cameras. I fulfilled obligations. I resumed the role, and everyone assumed I was fine, that the time away had helped, that I had returned refreshed. I hadn't. I had returned more hollow, more aware, more conscious of the gap between who I am and what I'm required to be. But awareness doesn't change circumstances. It just makes living inside them harder. So I came back, and I stayed, not happily, just inevitably. Disappearing for months taught me something I'll never forget, that freedom is temporary, that escape is an illusion, that no matter how far you run, duty will always pull you back. It also taught me that my life is not mine. It belongs to the role, to the family, to the system, and the system doesn't care if you're happy. It only cares if you function. So as long as you function, your unhappiness is irrelevant. The absence also taught me about loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded by people and realizing none of them see you. They see the position, the title, the function, but not the person. And that kind of loneliness, structural loneliness, you can't escape it by leaving because it follows you. It's built into the system you were born into. So leaving changed nothing, except making me more aware of what I can't change. Why did I disappear from Dubai for months? The surface answer, I needed space. The second answer, I was running from reality. The third answer, I was grieving. The fourth answer, I was afraid to come back. The real answer, I was testing whether anyone would miss me as a person, not a position, and they didn't. Not really. So I stayed away as long as I could until duty stopped allowing it. And then I came back. Not healed, not ready, just compliant, because compliance is all that's ever required. I disappeared because I needed to know if I mattered. And I came back knowing the truth, that I matter functionally, but not personally. And living with that truth, returning to a life that needs me but doesn't see me, that's harder than disappearing ever was, but it's what I do now. I function, I perform, I fulfill the role, and I carry the loneliness, because carrying it is the only option left. That's why I disappeared, and why I came back, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. If you've ever left to see if anyone would follow, and no one did, you understand. Some absences teach you exactly where you stand. And sometimes where you stand is alone,